Okay, so these are my top tips for getting started with any piece of scientific writing, whether that's a lab report or an essay. Hopefully, these tips will help you to get started and ultimately produce a better quality piece of work. Firstly, it might sound obvious, but it's important to get started early. If you start too late, you're going to be rushing and you're not going to be able to form coherent and comprehensive discussions if you're trying to do everything last minute. So ultimately, the more time you spend on it, the better the piece of work is going to be. And also, if you get started early and you're not rushing around trying to get things finished at the last minute, you're going to be less stressed. And ultimately, that's going to contribute to a better piece of work. So when you start a piece of work, do not try and start writing immediately. You might have some knowledge from lectures or from elsewhere in the back of your mind. And the temptation is to immediately try to get everything you know on paper. Because if you have, say, a 2,000 word essay and you can write 200 words straight away, well, you're going to feel like you're making progress. Because you're 200 words down and 1,800 to go, feels like you're getting somewhere. I would strongly discourage doing that because probably what you've written isn't as good as it could be. In some cases, it may be not very good at all, and you're ultimately going to have to rewrite it anyway later on. So read around the subject, read into the subject before you start trying to write anything. Spend maybe a week leading up to the deadline before you even start writing, just reading into the things that you need to read into. Start by reading the brief. Make sure you follow the brief as closely as you can. That way you won't go off topic quite so easily. You'll stay on target and you'll hit the main points. Often there's quite a tight word limit on many assessments. So by looking at the brief and really studying the brief and aiming to hit all the points that are on the brief specifically, you can make the best use of that word count. You're not going to get marks for going off on large tangents. Read it a few times. Read it whilst you're writing. I would even recommend having it open in the background so you can check that you are hitting the right main points. Pay attention to the language used in the brief as well. Look out for key words such as describe, summarize, which would suggest we want an overview of something, maybe a fairly short piece of writing for that particular point. Whereas words like critique, evaluate, we would expect a more involved discussion, a more significant chunk of the work would be expected there. Once you've read the brief, you can then look into specific areas. You know exactly then where to look, where to read, the sort of thing that you're looking for. And that's what you need to go and find. Read plenty of it. Read as much as you can. And make sure you use good quality sources. So textbooks are good for the sort of basic information. But for more advanced information, look for journal articles. Journal articles in particular will be really helpful when you're looking to discuss things, when you're looking at the pros and cons, or if you're comparing one bit of research to another. And ultimately, that's where the higher end of the marks come from. So ultimately then, reading as much as you can, good quality sources, being really clear on what the brief is asking you, is going to enable to give you good detail and present relevant, comprehensive discussions. So as you're reading, really important to be organised. If you're really reading into a number of different aspects and you're finding a good bit of information which leads you onto another good bit of information, and you find that you've got, if you're not careful, you can have loads of different tabs open, loads of different PDF documents open, and very quickly it can become a bit of a mess, and you can forget where you got certain bits of information from. My top tip here actually would be to avoid printing things out. It might be tempting to just, oh, that looks like a great bit of information, I'll print that out, and because a lot of people prefer to read from a piece of paper than on a screen. Very understandable. But if you print everything interesting you find, you're going to end up with, your desk will end up full of bits of paper, and you'll just get lost in the paperwork. So until you've got maybe a couple of things that you know are going to be really key to your piece of work, I would avoid printing until you find those pieces of work that are really going to be really helpful. So I'm sure most of you know that there's a really good bookmark system in any web browser, Chrome, etc. Make good use of it. And what I mean by that is create folders, create subfolders. For example, whenever I start a new piece of work, I'll start a new folder for that piece of work. And then I might even put in subfolders within the bookmarks for different sections, for example. And make sure when you put websites into as bookmarks, give it a really clear title so when you come back to it, you know exactly what it is. The other thing you'll find useful is the referencing system that you can find within Word. Now, I've done another video on this, so have a look on the rest of my YouTube channel. I'll also provide a link in the description below. What this will do is help you store references as you come across them, which will ultimately help you when you start writing the work. So it will store them for you, and it will help you to refer back to them, but also help you when you start writing. So it's well worth using. Something I like to do is I like to set out my structure. I'm not really writing anything yet. I'm doing the reading, but I find it really helps to just start your new Word document and set out all the subheadings. Maybe even put a title in and adjust the headers and footers if you want. It's a really good way of getting started. You feel like you're making progress, and that initial just getting started is so hard sometimes. And I find getting some headings in there, getting some subheadings in there, helps you feel organized. It helps you to feel like you're making some progress with it. Okay, and sometimes that's all you need, and actually the rest of it comes a little bit easier after that. Something that some people find really helpful is highlighting text. So normally with a printed document, you might want to take a highlighter and highlight the important areas that you need. Now you can actually do this with some PDF viewers. It has a tool for highlighting areas, and then you can save it. There is also some third-party software that can do this as well. So if you're the sort of person who likes to highlight text, these are well worth looking into. As you're reading, make notes, okay? And keep them as brief as you can. Now, because you've gone and put in your headings and subheadings, which has helped you, made you feel more organized, made you feel like you're making progress, now that those headings are in, you can make those notes under those headings and subheadings. And I would absolutely keep them as brief as you can, just bullet points. Don't copy paste large sections of text. It's okay if you want to copy paste things at this point, but I would keep it as minimal as possible. And when you do that, make sure you include the references as to where you got them from. There's nothing worse than finding a really, really interesting point and wanting to elaborate on that and reference it, and you can't find where you got it from originally. It's very frustrating. So make sure you put your references, whether that's just putting in the website for the time being or using the Word referencing system. Make sure you don't lose that information. Now, as you get towards the end of the process of reading into the subject, and you're starting to feel a little bit more confident with the subject, and you're feeling at the point where you want to start writing, The good thing about these notes is you can go to each of your notes and elaborate on them. So you can start expanding that from a bullet point into maybe a few sentences or even a paragraph. I personally find that I can't work from introduction, methods, results, discussion, conclusion. I tend to find myself working on each section sort of fairly sporadically as I find the right information I need, as I feel as if I can pull something together for that particular section. Often what you find is people tend to write a really lovely introduction because it's the first thing they did, and then the rest of it gets a little bit forgotten. So don't be afraid to work on different sections at different points and come back to things. You don't have to work on it from the first sentence of the introduction to the last sentence of the conclusion. You can work on it in any order you want. Proofread. So once you've started writing, something you must continually do. I cannot emphasize this enough. You must read over what you've written. Okay. So initially you're looking, am I clear? Am I really clear with the point I've tried to make? And secondly, is it as concise as it could be? You don't get marks for waffle. Okay? Be as absolutely concise as you can. And you'll find that if the more concise you are with your sentences, actually the clearer they become. Waffle can often end up contradicting in your writing. You can end up contradicting yourself or just becoming completely unclear as to what it is you mean. So keep reading over things. Have I been clear? Have I been concise? Have I given as much detail as I can? And this is where all your reading is going to come into effect. Give examples. If you make a really good point, give an example. Give a couple of examples. And of course, reference that. That's all part of including more detail. If you read over something, and it might be something you wrote maybe early on in the process, and you find that you're not happy with it, and that could be a few sentences, it could be a whole paragraph. Don't be afraid of rewriting it. It's quite painful to do that, to just select a whole paragraph and delete it and start again. But it is worth doing. If you're not happy with it, don't just submit it with that in there. Again, if you've started nice and early, you should have time to do this. What I like to do with this, actually, is if I want to rewrite a paragraph, I won't delete it. I'll cut and paste it to a different document and call that document notes or whatever. And that way I can refer to it so I don't miss anything out with my rewriting of that paragraph. But also, there may be a sentence or two in there that's actually quite good. I'm still okay with, so I can still bring those across. And I find that helps with as you rewrite that paragraph, but also it doesn't feel quite so daunting a task because I've still got the old one there, and if I still struggle to rewrite it, I can just put it back in if I really want to. And there we have it. Those are my top tips for getting started with your scientific writing. I hope you found that helpful, and any questions, leave them in the comments below. Thank you.